Hello, today I will be talking about hygiene hypothesis and giving an example. Hygiene hypothesis suggests that a newborn baby's immune system must be educated so it will function properly during infancy and the rest of its life. Furthermore, it promotes that living in a highly sanitized environment during childhood is associated with a high prevalence of autoimmune diseases later in life. Note, the decline in infectious diseases could be associated with the increasing incidence of autoimmune diseases. The hygiene hypothesis proposes that decreasing the diversity and levels of microbes in our normal microbiota may negatively affect immune responses. Studies performed on germ-free animals that were born and raised in microbe-free environments reveal that these animals have an underdeveloped immune system and struggle to combat pathogens. People with chronic inflammatory disorders like irritable bowel disease, also known as IBD, have clear shifts into the normal gut microbiota. In mouse models for IBD, Clostridia bacteria populations are especially decreased. Pathogens face robust competition from the normal microbiota of the intestinal tract and may fail to find a niche to survive unless the microbiota population is decreased. Clostridium difficile is a case in point of this. Vaginal pH is kept low by lactate acid produced in bacteria called lactobacilli. A reduction in lactobacilli levels can occur following antibiotic therapies and leads to an increase in vaginal pH, which in turn allows the opportunistic pathogen Candida, which is a yeast, to grow and cause a vaginal yeast infection. The hygiene hypothesis is a theory that was proposed in the late 1980s by David Strachan. It was created to describe how the increased measures to allergic diseases through immune, which is defined as a substance that affects the functioning of the immune system. Furthermore, it relates to the lack of exposure to infectious agents, symbiotic microorganisms, and bacteria living in symbiosis with another organism for each other. For example, flagella found in the stomach of termites enable them to digest cellulose, which we know in parasites during childhood. Hygiene hypothesis suggests that a child's environment can be too clean to successfully stimulate or expose the child's immune system to respond to a variation of threats during the time a child's immune system is growing and maturing. Furthermore, if the child's environment is too clean, the hypothesis suggests that the immune system will not mature properly and may not appropriately react with the immune system of a child as it interacts with germs such as bacteria, viruses, parasites, and fungi, or other environmental triggers such as toxic chemicals, dietary components, and infections. Some examples of this are pollen, animal dander, fungal spores that may present later in life. In all reasoning, the hypothesis further suggests that the lack of immune system challenge results in many people developing immune-related health issues. Let's take a look at this picture of early life airway microbial exposure and development of asthma. We have hygiene hypothesis and the infectious asthma hypothesis. Let's take a moment to compare the normal lung and airway into the inflamed lung and airway. There is many public confusion and misconceptions about hygiene hypothesis. However, evidence came from a cohort study done in Denmark that was published in the BMJ In the study, 13,070 children were researched and found that factors associated early and repeated microbial exposure were associated with a decreased risk of developing allergies later in life. Factors include increasing number of siblings, daycare, pet ownership, and farm residence. Repeated infectious diseases before age 6 months was associated with an increased risk. The risk of atopic dermatitis increased with each infectious disease. These findings are consistent with the hygiene hypothesis as it applies to microbial exposure, but did not consider the exposure to allergens may have been the reason. The increased risk associated infectious diseases seems to indicate that it may not be exposure to microbes at all, but some other factor related to increasing number of siblings, daycare, pet ownership, and farm residence. Other studies have also found an association between pet early exposure and decreased risk of atopic dermatitis. However, these studies focus only on allergens and not microbes. I hope you have enjoyed this video and it has helped you to look into a little bit more of hygiene hypothesis and what exactly it is and how it is described.